Yes, good morning, Turku. And greetings from Stanford. It is actually still Thursday night here. Right, and today it is, and thank you, Jussi, for introducing me. And today it is my pleasure to tell you about what I think psychedelic research then can learn from dream research with a focus on methodology. And why I'm talking about this, because I have been conducting research on dreams or dream experiences. So, and I hope that dream research can provide some important insights and guideposts for future psychedelic research. To begin with, I would like to ask you two questions. I can't hear your answers, but just answer in your own minds. Firstly, did you have a dream last night? And then if you did, what did you dream about? I assume that you all kind of understood my questions and had no problems answering them, because most of us know what it is like to dream. And it is actually estimated that during our lifetimes, we spend about 25 years of our lives sleeping and 6 years of this dreaming. And well, most of us experience dreams every night. But what are dreams? What are we talking about? So dreams are naturally occurring altered states of consciousness that most of us experience every single night, even if we don't remember them. And how dreams are defined scientifically or in scientific research is that they are a sequence of subjective experiences that occur during sleep. So pretty straightforward definition. And these experiences can range from very simple and static experiences, such as some unisensory images and thoughts, to complex and dynamic experiences that are immersive and multisensory and like story-like hallucinations. And typically when we think about dreams, we think of the latter. Now, similarly to how I have just defined dreams, we can think of psychedelic experiences as a sequence of subjective experiences that occur as a result of ingesting psychedelic substances. Well, the difference is that we have dreams when we are sleeping at night. So we are in a sleeping state or dreaming state. And psychedelic experiences, well, we typically have when we are awake, right, in wakefulness. Although we are kind of still have some blockage of external stimuli, but not as much as we have when we are dreaming or sleeping. And well, typically we think that sleep and wakeful experiences are very different from each other because they occur in a totally different behavioral and neurophysiological state. But it is more and more suggested that these experiences are continuous across the states. So for example, according to the dynamic framework of thought, both dream and psychedelic experiences are spontaneous, kind of spontaneous experiences, or what we see here like spontaneous thoughts. And both of them are kind of not very much constrained by our cognitive control mechanisms, as compared to goal-directed thought in wakefulness, which is very much constrained by cognitive control mechanisms. So dreaming or dream experiences and psychedelic experiences seem to be similar. And in fact, these experiences have long been considered phenomenologically similar as well. So already here were papers in the 70s and 80s that proposed that dream and psychedelic experiences are very similar. And also a more recent paper by Graneman from 2017 arguing the same. And of course, if you know the entropic brain hypothesis of Carhart-Harris, he also has put forward that the psychedelic state and REM sleep dreaming are similar because they're both characterized by high entropy. Okay, but what do we know then about dream experiences? What are they like? So what does research show? Because there has been quite a lot of research on dream experiences that we know what the phenomenology is like. So dreams are relatively realistic simulations of the waking world, although about 30% of dreams do include elements that are not possible in waking life. Dreams are mostly visual and auditory. Other sensory modalities are pretty rare. Contrary to what we normally think, dreams are actually not so bizarre. Although, if we're very accurate, it really depends on how we define bizarreness or how it has been defined in different research studies. In a dream, there is usually a dream self, or what Jennifer Wind calls self in a world. Although this self can be distorted from what we know it is in wakefulness, it can be seen from different perspectives, so not only from first-person perspective, but third-person perspective, or it can even be disembodied. Dreams are social because we know that most dreams contain at least one other character and there are social interactions. And typically we think of dreams as really emotional, although as we will see later today, it really depends on methodology, like how emotional and dreams are and whether they are mostly positively or negatively valenced. We can also have cognitive, dreams also contain cognitive activities, that is, we can think in dreams, but our cognition is hyper-associative in dreams. But what is really characteristic to dream experiences is that we lack metacognitive awareness or insight. We don't really know when we're dreaming that we are dreaming. A prominent example here is lucid dreaming, where a person is aware that he or she is dreaming. Now, based on these descriptions and based on what we kind of know from anecdotal reports and perhaps some research findings from psychedelic experiences, there seem to be similarities, yes? Like dreams, psychedelic experiences are, let's say, very visual experiences, very emotional experiences, hyper-associative. But there are also some differences. So psychedelic experiences seem to be more bizarre. And well, there is metacognitive awareness or insight. Typically, people are aware that they are having these psychedelic experiences. And in that sense, many researchers have argued that perhaps psychedelic experiences are more similar to lucid dreams than this kind of more regular dreams. But what is really interesting, and well, it's even super surprising, is that there has been very little research on comparing dream and psychedelic experiences. So it's mostly just anecdotal reports. Here is one study, relatively recent, from 2018, by sons from the Enzo Dagliazzucchi research group, who actually did compare reports obtained after people have taken some psychoactive substances and then dream reports. So what the researchers did was that they obtained reports from the Erowid website. So people describing their experiences after having ingested different types of psychoactive substances. And they compared those reports to dream reports that they obtained from a website where people can report their dream experiences. And they used natural language processing to compare semantic similarity between those reports. And so what did the findings show? So here on the bottom, you see high lucidity dreams, so dreams that were characterized to be more lucid. And we see to which substance these lucid dreams are most similar, or like if we compare the experiences or the reports of that people have as a result of ingesting psychoactive substances and as a result of dreaming. So dreams are similar to which reports? Highest similarity versus lowest similarity. And we see that highest similarity of dreams or dream reports are to these kind of substances that are denoted here in purple, and these are serotonergic psychedelics. So lucid dreams are most similar to those reports, whereas least similarities here to these substances denoted by these green blobs, which are reports when people have taken depressants or sedatives. And actually the results were really similar also for non-lucid dreams. So dreams, according to this research, or at least dream reports, the language that people use is similar to the reports that people produce after having taken serotonergic psychedelics. Also, researchers looked at the most frequently used words in those two different types of reports. And most similar were words that referred to visual perception, so like see and color and face. Also to emotion, for example, fear. Settings such as indoors, outdoors, place, and relatives, mom, dad, family. Right, so this was like this similarity between dream reports and psychedelic reports, I would say. Right, but actually we know really little, and we need much more research to really understand so how similar and how different psychedelic experiences are to dream experiences. And this research needs to be carried out. And on that note, I will now turn the focus on methodological issues to show what we have found in dream research, what methodological aspects are super important, that if we want to carry out research on psychedelics or comparing dream experiences to psychedelic experiences, what is it that we need to take into account? So when we talk about dream experiences and psychedelic experiences, so they both are subjective experiences, right? And as the word says, they are subjective. It makes them really difficult to study objectively. So when we talk about dreams, so dreams happen to, they are experiences. They happen in a dreaming state to what we can call the experiencing self, right? This is the dream experiences. Now, but we don't have access, like as researchers, we don't have access to the experiencing self, but we have to wait until a person wakes up and then tells us what he or she was experiencing. And this depends on the memories, right, of these experiences, the remembering self. And not only that, but also on how the person is able to report what was happening or what he or she was experiencing. That is the reporting self. So in a way, we have to translate the experience into memories and into reports. And this process in itself can include or involve a lot of different biases or pitfalls. So we have our memory can be biased, we forget stuff, things get distorted. The reporting is biased, people differ in what kind of language they use, how well they're able to describe what is happening. And also our waking beliefs, the believing self actually influences what we remember and what we report. Like what we believe our experiences are like affects and how we kind of describe what happened to us. So this is what we can talk about dream experiences. But well, actually, we can say the same thing about psychedelic experiences, right? A person is having psychedelic experiences, it's the experiencing self, and we don't have access to this experiencing self, but we rely on the memories of that person telling us and the reporting self, or the reports of that person telling us what he or she was experiencing. Of course, the difference is that when a person is in a psychedelic state, we can in principle ask the person like, okay, tell what you're experiencing right now. So there is some kind of access. But of course, the problem here is then that asking this or the person describing this while the experience is happening can itself distort or influence the experience, right? So there's like other issues here. Okay, but what are the two important implications then based on what I just told you? So number one, it is that if we want to study experiences, we have to really try to reduce memory biases as much as possible and reporting biases as much as possible, because these distort the actual reports of the actual experiences. So how do we get access to the experience as such? But how can we do that? Well, I'll come back to it towards the end of this presentation. So moving on. So how do we do dream research? So how do we collect dream data? We can ask people to come to a laboratory. We hook them up to, for example, EEG, and then they sleep, we wake them up and ask what we were dreaming about. We can ask people to sleep at home and keep a home dream diary where as soon as they wake up in the morning, they write down what they were experiencing. We can also use, different types of questionnaires, general questionnaires that ask people, so what are your experiences typically like, dream experiences? And we can ask people to say, what describe the most recent dream that you remember, whether it was last night, last week, last month. And what is like important here is that all these different methods involve, different pluses and minuses. But perhaps the most important thing is to think about what are we actually measuring. So if we want to really get closest to the actual experiences, which is of course difficult, then we have to try to use measures that capture those experiences the best, and hence like are closest to the experience. So in that sense, for example, when we talk about dream experiences, it would be the sleep laboratory awakenings or home dream diary. Because, for example, general questionnaires measure more waking beliefs about experiences than the experiences itself. And the most recent dream method, for example, measures the most salient, that is the most emotional, most memorable experiences, which is not representative. And in fact, we have conducted research. So I, together with my colleagues, Antti Rövel, I'm Katja Valli, who are also at University of Turku. We have conducted studies where we, for example, compared dream reports obtained in the laboratory and in the home setting. And what we found was that home dream reports actually were more, from the same individuals, right, were more emotional and negatively valenced than laboratory dream reports. So the main thing here is to think about that the setting where you collect data matters. It actually influences the results you get. Other researchers have compared, for example, home dream diaries with dream questionnaires and have found, again, that depends what method you use, you can get different results. So, for example, keeping a logbook or dream diary, people remember more dreams and more nightmares than when, for example, you ask them using general questionnaires. So, coming back to this, how we collect data matters and influences the results. And the same, of course, applies to when we study psychedelic experiences. Like, what methods are we using? Are we kind of as close to the person while they're having the experience, and then we ask, what did you just experience? Or people themselves at home keep track of what their experience is, or we use some general questionnaires. So it's really important to think about that. Another important issue is to think about how do we analyze the data, what type of data we collect, and how do we analyze it. So here's some examples regarding studies we have collected regarding dream emotions. So first of all, we'll talk about how can we analyze dream data. So we can take the narrative dream reports, people describe what's happened to them, and we can analyze the content. And usually this is done by external raters or judges, and that's why I call it external ratings. So for example, if there's a dream report, then I saw he had a dog. Dog ended up in a car, licking my neck. I told him, no, don't do that, as I was scared about catching the virus from him. So we can read the report and we can see, okay, the person is experiencing fear. Alternatively, we can ask participants to, fill in self-rating scales. How did you feel in your dream? For example, on a scale from 0 to 4, how much, for example, fear did you feel? And so these two methods we have compared. So we have obtained data from the same participants from the same experiences, and we have just analyzed it differently. Either we analyze narrative reports or we ask participants themselves to rate the experiences. And what is surprising, perhaps, is that you get totally different results of the same experiences. So with self-ratings, dreams appear to be more emotional and more positive than with external ratings. And this doesn't apply only to dreams. Our recent study shows that the same discrepancies also apply when we measure waking experiences or mind-wandering experiences. So the same reports, or the same, let's say not reports, the same experiences, but we can get totally different results depending on what method we use. Right, so what does it all mean for example, psychedelic research? Firstly, different methods capture different aspects of the underlying experience. So we have the subjective experience, dream experience, psychedelic experience. And we try to capture it somehow, measure it somehow. One way is we ask people to describe what they were experiencing. So we get verbal expression of the experience. Another method, we ask them to rate what they were or evaluate what they were experiencing with self-ratings. The important thing to think about is all methods capture some aspects of the subjective experience, and these different methods may not necessarily overlap either. So we have to carefully think what methods to use. Different methods, as we saw, produce different results and can lead to totally different conclusions. So, for example, in dream research, we have shown that, well, depending on which method you use, dreams can appear, the same dreams can appear either or as very positive or very negative. And this itself has implications for studying the psychological and the neural correlates of these experiences. Because if we want to correlate, for example, we have the psychedelic experience, we want to correlate it to waking well-being, or what are the neural correlates? We need to know what are we correlating with what. So, for example, we have shown that self and external ratings of dream emotions are differently related to waking well-being. When you analyze the content of reports, it's more strongly related to well-being than the self-ratings. So you can again get different results regarding the correlates of the experiences. And again, of course, the same applies to when we study psychedelic experiences. So to finish up, how should we then study subjective experiences, be they dream experiences or psychedelic experiences? First of all, it would be important to conduct longitudinal studies so that we would be able to get data from the same participants, right? That we get dream, for example, if we want to compare dream and psychedelic experiences, that we get data regarding both from the same participants, and ideally over a longer period of time, so that we have many sessions or many reports, right? So that we can parse out within individual and between individual differences. As I mentioned before, if we want to study experiences, we need to reduce memory biases. How to do that? Temporal proximity. We need to get as close as possible to the experience as such. Otherwise, memory comes in and distorts things. How to reduce reporting biases if we want to get as close as possible to the experiences? We have to train participants in how to recall, report, and rate their experiences. We can't assume that participants or people know how to do that. If we don't tell them how they should pay attention to the experiences, how to tell them, they might not, tell us important things. And relatedly, we have to use very carefully crafted instructions of how and what exactly they should report, for example. And finally, we should use a multi-method approach. So not only, for example, self-ratings and not only content analysis of reports and not only questionnaires, but ideally all of them, because they all show us something about the experience, perhaps that we can't capture only with one method. But as a final take-home message, if I would have to put it into all in one sentence or statement, what is the take-home message, then that would be what and how you measure is what you get. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm super happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Absolutely wonderful talk with lots of importance for psychedelic research. Do we have local questions here? I certainly have a ton of questions. Maybe I will read online question, check what is there. I will read aloud this from Daniel Fernandez. In a trivial dream, it's possible through fMRI to identify specific brain activity, including content like specific visuals, reference to Costandi 2013, whereas in an information-rich and commonly transformative psychedelic experience and near-death experiences, brain activity is significantly reduced. This seems to suggest that they are ontologically different phenomena. What do you think?
I'm just thinking. I'm reading the question. It was a long question. So it's a very interesting question. I have to think about it. So first, I think I'm not sure how much we can actually still identify or read specific brain activity related to experiences.
Yeah, if I rephrase a bit, I think the asker might be referring to whether brain activity is increased or reduced. They might be saying that in psychedelic experience, the brain activity is reduced, but what do you think, Pils, is brain activity increased or reduced during dreaming? like as a starter?
Well, I would say first that we don't know, actually. We don't know the neural correlates of dreaming. We know a lot of stuff regarding REM sleep, for example, or sleep, but we don't know so much about dreaming as such. Of course, there have been now studies by, for example, Sikka and colleagues who have tried to correlate dream experiences with non-experiences. And what these studies have found that, yes, that, for example, you find when people have experiences versus not, then there is reduced low frequency activity and increased high frequency activity, electrical activity in these certain areas of the brain, especially in the posterior parts of the brain, in this kind of visual association cortices. So that would kind of refer to that there is some increased activity, but I'm having a bit difficult. It's like to generalize like increased or decreased activity. I think we need to be more specific than that. Yeah,
it makes no sense because we don't really have even methods to measure like absolute increase, because we have only like relative, because fMRI, for example, operates on differences in blood flow. I'm not an expert on that, but I want to ask before we do something else. There's like lots here. Let's see what I have written down. There is like this general just like pondering here about because when I now have this experience here, this experience, now it's gone. It was a moment ago there, but what was that experience? Now I'm referring from the current moment to the past experience. So in this sense, experience continuously escapes from our grasp. And even when it's like, you could say that there is like content versus description. Like in, you mentioned in dreams, it's a fact that when I dream, I undergo, well, there is this process happening that is the dream. But immediately when I wake up, it's gone. The original experience is gone. There is some kind of memory trace of it. And then when you report, it seems plausible to say that you report the dream, but also the report is then your new state of consciousness. And you are sort of like, are you reporting the memory of the dream or the dream? And then you have this like, because when you do the reporting, like I myself, I write dream reports, and I notice, I just start to write, and I notice how the memory trace changes like vividly as I write. If I put another word, the whole image like transforms into something new. So it's like this continually changing. So how is it possible to track it in any sense? But this is the core of the whole problem.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, it is with all that's the problem of when we study subjective experiences, right? But I think actually from our research group, Neil Sandman had this, in his PhD, he proposed this term, the experience of experience. So that what you're having is the experience of the experience that you had. So it's like, it's not anymore the original experience, but it's already the experience of the previous. So yeah, of course, we can't escape that, but obviously it's difficult to know whether we can ever capture the experience as it was, but at least we can try to get as close as possible to that. I guess that could be the aim. Maybe we can't come to the original thing that was going on.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, one final quick question before we go for a pause. Just a moment. Please.
Hello, and thank you for a beautiful presentation. I remember you said something that 30% of dreams include elements that are not in the waking life. Can you elaborate? What did you mean with that? And what did you refer to? Like, are there studies about that? Thank you.
So these are things that are basically impossible in waking life. You know, we can do things that we can't do in waking life, like fly, for example, or maybe we experience some characters or actions that don't exist in waking life. So there are things possible in dreams that are not possible in waking life, and that's but that's not actually, it's not so frequent as we typically think. But these are like these kind of not possible things in waking life that, for example, people who are blind can have dreams, or people who are paraplegic can still walk in their dreams or move around. So things that to them in waking life is not like possible, for example.